A lot of people, when they talk about things, present it like a TED Talk, like, I knew at the time, or I was already starting to internalize all of this. But really, I couldn't have told you back then what it was. Too much money, and too much time kills creativity. He skipped out on rehab in his 20s and chose instead to go to conflict resolution workshops in Santa Fe, which, depending on your vibe, I both recommend and don't recommend, unless you're into turquoise jewelry. Hey friends! Welcome back to my channel. Stephanie Jones is absolutely going to pressure Blake Lively into settling. Just watch. Allegedly. Maybe. Who knows? But something just happened. I recorded this whole video where I was planning to talk all about Tay and Blake, and why Tay doesn't want to give a deposition. I was going to lay it all out, how Tay might be getting subpoenaed, and all the reasons she's avoiding standing up for her friend. Then, while I was getting the video ready, I noticed my hard drive was totally full, and I accidentally deleted all of the audio from that video. So now, instead, I'm here with what's actually a bigger story. It involves Stephanie Jones's lawyers sitting down with Billy Bush on ExtraTV. I'm not going to play what they said, because it's ridiculous, but I'll paraphrase and directly quote their responses. The way they presented things was just odd. So, let's dive into it. Billy Bush interviewed Maren Shaw and Christian Tyler, the two attorneys representing Stephanie Jones. Shaw told Billy Bush they're going after her clients. They claimed there was a kill piece that ran in Business Insider, and they believed there was a conspiracy behind it. They said things like, we were going to be rich and happy and make a lot of money together, and also claimed they were being abused by Stephanie. What's wild is that her lawyers don't seem to even acknowledge the possibility that Stephanie was maybe a hostile or inappropriate boss. Honestly, I'm surprised she hasn't been sued by former employees for workplace discrimination, creating a toxic environment, or employer retaliation. But hey, that's just me again. They're picking and choosing. And then Billy asked, the main issue for me is the text messages that came out in the New York Times on December 22nd. Baldoni and his team are calling it collusion. You're saying those texts weren't leaked, that they were subpoenaed by Blake. Shaw replied, that's right, Billy. Our client Stephanie Jones has recently become the center of a lot of speculation. She's been in this industry for years, and she filed the lawsuit we're discussing today to defend her business, her clients, and the reputation she's worked hard to build. It's kind of ironic that they're talking about protecting Stephanie's clients, because Stephanie didn't protect her clients. She was out here sharing private messages and confidential information with people who had absolutely no involvement. She had no business giving that info to anyone. And let's not forget, she's been dropped by a long list of clients. Trying to blame that so-called expose in Business Insider feels like pure deflection. Why did all those clients walk away? Why did Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson leave her? Why did Chris Hemsworth? Why did Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez cut ties? Why did major corporations drop her? Why were over 40 individuals interviewed by Business Insider? And yet, somehow it's just Jenel who gets blamed for this hit piece. Maybe those people just wanted out of a toxic work environment. Then Billy brought up Jenel again, the one who left and joined Baldoni's crisis PR team. They claimed she's involved because of serious contract violations. According to Stephanie's team, Jenel breached her employment contract, and so did Wayfair and Justin Baldoni. They had a deal with Jones Works and they broke it. Billy asked point-blank, does Wayfair owe money to Jones Works? Taylor responded, absolutely. She said Stephanie is owed at least a couple $100,000, specifically $250,000, even though Stephanie's behavior was, frankly, chaotic. And in retaliation for being fired, she allegedly passed along confidential client info to Blake Lively. Billy didn't hold back. He went straight for the tough questions. One of them was, Stephanie's just responding to a subpoena, but did she know the subpoena was coming from Blake Lively's shell company? That company was Vanson Inc. The real question was whether Stephanie realized the subpoena came from a shell company, and I loved that he actually used the term shell company. Because, let's be honest, when you say shell company, you're hinting at shady stuff. Shell companies are often used to hide assets, launder money, commit tax fraud, and other types of white-collar crime. They don't have any legitimate operations. But instead of giving a straight answer, her team dodged. They just said, let's just say the process that was used was fully appropriate. That's what Kristen Taylor said. But that's not an answer. The question was, did Stephanie know Vanzin Incorporated was a shell company used to hide Blake's involvement? And they completely sidestepped it, saying, let's just say it was fully appropriate to use doesn't actually answer the question. It's a total non-answer. And when someone avoids answering directly, it usually means they don't have an answer. Instead, they try to shift attention elsewhere, distract from the real issue, and call it normal or common. Because if they did admit what really happened, if they confirmed Stephanie knowingly used a shell company, they could be opening themselves up to civil liability. The attorneys are choosing their words carefully because admitting that Stephanie was aware of the shell company could lead to serious consequences, ethical violations, sanctions, maybe even disbarment. But instead of accountability, these lawyers seem more focused on defending Stephanie in yet another tabloid interview. It's the same routine, again and again. Here's the irony, though. None of this would even be in the public conversation if Stephanie, or someone in her circle, hadn't leaked the subpoena in the first place. That's how this all came to light. And now they're trying to act like we didn't actually see what we clearly saw. Billy Bush pressed further, asking if what they did was even legal. And they responded by insisting it wasn't some shady workaround. They claimed it was a standard process, common practice. Taylor explained that when someone feels defamed or attacked, and they don't know exactly who's responsible, they can file what's known as a DOE lawsuit to figure it out. She even compared it to when someone wants to track down the person behind a defaming website. You sue the unknown party to get the info. Then Billy asked, what do you expect to happen next? And she answered, like I said, we're moving forward with our legal claims. They're solid, they're well-founded, and we're going to take them to trial. But then came the real reason they were on camera. Billy asked, what if Brian Friedman comes to you and wants to settle? And that was it. That's the whole reason they were doing this press round. You could tell. They answered with, never say never. That's something we'll all have to think about moving forward. That's all you need to hear. They're putting it out there that they want a settlement. On one hand, they're saying, we're going to trial. But the second settlement is brought up. It's, well, we'll have to consider it. In my opinion, that tells you everything. They're looking for a way to wrap this up.
Why?
Because the more details that surface around the subpoena, the worse it looks for them. And honestly, if Stephanie was really just a passive party, just someone being subpoenaed, then why all the defensiveness? Why act like there's something to hide? If there were no liability or wrongdoing, why would they even feel the need to justify the lawsuit at all? If this was a completely legitimate case, why go on ExtraTV and tell people, no, this isn't an end around, this is totally normal? Why dodge the direct question about the shell company? Why avoid answering whether Stephanie knew it was Vanzin Incorporated behind the subpoena? And when they gave that non-answer, if I had been the journalist, I would have pushed again. But did she know it was a shell company? Because that is going to be the real issue when this goes to court. Obviously, they won't say publicly that she knew. But again, if Stephanie was truly just someone on the receiving end of a court-ordered subpoena, why would she even need to defend herself? She wouldn't. But here's the reality. If Stephanie responded to a subpoena from a shell company that had no connection to Justin Baldoni or Jenny Yell, and she was just a third party and Blake's lawyers didn't go through proper judicial channels, didn't get permission from a judge to issue that third-party subpoena, then we have a huge problem. Even in New York, where the laws are pretty relaxed, they'd still need to follow the proper process. That means going through a judge to get the subpoena signed and officially ordered. But in this case, no judge was assigned, no court approval was given. And if Stephanie voluntarily handed over documents to Blake Lively just days after Blake filed her lawsuit, without notifying the employee who was being targeted or her former clients, then that's not just a bad look, that's deeply unethical. Now they're sitting on camera claiming they need to protect Stephanie Jones and the business she built. But what I think is happening is that people behind the scenes are hearing all this and starting to wonder, if I ever fall out with Stephanie, is she going to hand over all of my private messages to my enemy? Is she going to retaliate and leak my info to someone who will weaponize it in the press to ruin me? Because that's exactly what it looks like happened here. Stephanie didn't notify Jen. She didn't give Wayfair a heads up. And neither did Blake. And now they're trying to spin this as normal procedure by giving a totally unrelated hypothetical about defamation, where someone files a DOE lawsuit to uncover the identity of someone behind a website. But that's just more deflection. Because Blake already knew who she was targeting. Back on August 21st, Stephanie Jones told Leslie Sloan about those texts. Blake already knew who the people involved were. She knew she was going after Justin Baldoni. She knew something had gone down, and that Justin would be the one taking the fall. She knew her targets: Melissa, Nathan, Jenny. There was no mystery. She didn't need to go digging. There wasn't some anonymous website like StephanieJohnesleys.com she needed to uncover. There were real people, people who were victims of domestic violence, who came forward and spoke out. And the women who are now standing in front of cameras claiming to defend Stephanie and Blake are actively doing harm to those survivors. It's a disgrace. A disgrace to women, and to any person who's ever stood up against abuse. And another point I want to add here. Blake Lively isn't just feeling pressure from the public or the legal system. She's facing pressure from Stephanie Jones herself, who clearly realized, maybe I shouldn't have leaked that subpoena to the press. Oops. Now she's in defense mode, trying to frame the whole thing as normal, as if she was just complying, just someone casually responding to a subpoena. Wink wink. That's not what her attorneys are saying. But anyway, back to my story. Taylor also said something else. Yesterday, Taylor Swift made a statement through a source to Entertainment Tonight, saying she wants nothing to do with Blake Lively's legal battle with Justin Baldoni. She just wants to focus on herself, spend time with her boyfriend, and enjoy some well-earned time off. And she's making it very clear, she does not want to get dragged into this mess. Why now? Probably because just a few days ago, reports came out that Taylor was about to be subpoenaed for a deposition. And those depositions are due by August 14th. There are apparently 2 or 3 dozen people they still need to depose. That's a lot to cram in a short amount of time. So, what is Taylor really saying here? She's sending a message, loud and clear, to Blake. You need to settle. I'm not going to help you. And why wouldn't she help her? Maybe because she knows something. Maybe she knows that Blake had feelings for Justin. Maybe she was even confided in. Maybe Blake told her she wanted to cheat on Ryan. Maybe Taylor knows that this whole sexual harassment angle came after Justin rejected Blake. That's the story floating around online right now. Allegedly, people close to Blake, like Brittany Mahomes, were gossiping about this over the weekend during a girls' trip. Word is, Brittany allegedly told friends that Blake wasn't harassed, that she made a move on Justin, he turned her down, and then she flipped the narrative to make herself the victim. If that's true, it explains a lot. It explains why Taylor wants out. Maybe she doesn't want to lie for Blake. Maybe she doesn't want to be part of this story at all. And need we bring up the receipts? All those flirty texts. I'm a ball buster but never with teeth. I want to show you this cap. It's going to be more sexy in person. That's the kind of girl I'd turn my head at. She was clearly flirting. He wasn't reciprocating. They always say, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. And a jealous husband? Even worse. I'll say it straight. I still believe that Blake Lively tried to start an affair with Justin Baldoni. When it didn't work, she flipped the script and accused him of harassment, maybe as a way to salvage her marriage. Maybe she needed Ryan to believe she was the victim, not the one who tried to cheat. And let's not forget, Blake has a history. She allegedly cheated on Penn Badgley to be with Ryan. She was rumored to be Ben Affleck's mistress, while he was still married to Jennifer Garner. She's been linked to co-stars during her marriage. And Ryan Reynolds? He knows how he met her. They were both involved with other people. So is it really that hard to believe she might have tried something again? Away from Ryan, on set with Justin, using her sexuality to get power or attention, and when that failed, she used the nuclear option, a harassment claim. Now Taylor Swift wants out. Stephanie Jones's attorneys are on Extra trying to spin this like there's nothing to see here. But if that were true, why would they be signaling a possible settlement while simultaneously saying their case is rock solid? You can't have it both ways. And why is their client, Stephanie Jones, in the middle of all this speculation? Because she started it. She ran to the press. She leaked the subpoena. And now that it's blowing up, suddenly there's all this protect Stephanie energy. It's pressure. Pressure from Taylor. Pressure from the media. And then, just as Taylor backs out, boom. Rumors start swirling again about the affair.
Same day.
Coincidence? Or a signal to Blake that her friends are done covering for her? Because maybe they all know exactly who she is.